It's definitely too cold for this. Here goes nothing. Touché. Let's hit the road. Welcome aboard. Now, due to contractual reasons that I shan't get into, and to be honest, the contract is way too lengthy to work my way out of, I am obliged to provide John with a video about the Picasso. I've tried to get out of it. The terms in the deal would have meant I'd have owed John about if I didn't produce this 10-minute clip for him. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you to work with me. Now, slight problem with that. I'm not allowed to say what I do, which makes it sound far more mysterious than it actually is. However, if you just spend a couple of minutes looking up my name or going onto my Twitter or Facebook or just anything like that, you'll find it. But financial promotions won't allow me to say any more than that. Anyway, we're going on a bit of a trip to just put some miles on pass, and we currently sit here setting off on the journey with 514,628 miles on the clock. So chronologically, we're doing this after the road trip. So you join us at our next destination, the extremely childish Prick Willow. And I thought what I'd do on this sort of journey out of the area, which John can choose to edit how he wishes, is just give you my thoughts, really, more than anything, on what I realise now is going to have to sort of be an apology. For years, I hated the Citroen Picasso. I thought it stood for all those things that Jeremy Clarkson would say, you know, in the news section of Top Gear. You know, this is a car for people who have given up on life. And I think that's a huge discredit to a car that has definitely been influential in this sector of car, the MPV. The Renault Scenic, the Citroen Xsara Picasso, the Vauxhall Zafira are probably the three main leaders. And when you look back at those three cars, yes, fine, the Zafira and then eventually the Scenic had 7-seat options, and in fairness, as did the C4 Picasso that followed this. But this was the cheapest and probably the best of the lot. So it's a weird one. I didn't expect to be raving about this car, but I will as we travel on through our journey. Apologies to John in advance, because what I'm about to do is produce one very long clip with lots of talking in that you can then break up as and how you feel you want to break it up. But I feel that's probably going to be easier. So on my way down, I'm going to do lots of talking, and then in between meetings, I'm going to do some action-y shots and things like that. A couple of things to note specifically about this car. So far, we've only found one thing that doesn't work as well as we'd expect it to. That would be the temperature gauge. The car is telling me it is -5 degrees. Dear viewer, I can confirm it is not -5 degrees. It is probably 0. However, as you heard this morning, it fired straight up again after sitting overnight outside my house. I don't live in a particularly urban part of town, so it was very cold and frosty. But fired straight up, as it did when I took it away from John's yard yesterday. Everything else seems to work, which is, you know, incredible. But once again, probably sort of ruins that stigma that these, you know, French cars have, that, you know, you get in there and all the electrics are broken and, you know, failing. But actually, there's not even a single dead pixel on the screen. So we can't really fault it. Obviously, we're driving the 2-litre turbo diesel version here. There was a 1.6 that came out later down the line. If you speak to anybody, they will tell you that it is a little bit more fragile and realistically not that much more economical. It has to work very hard on a fully laden car like this. Therefore, the 2-litre is probably your pick of the bunch. When it first came out, you could get a non-turbo diesel, and that would definitely have been something to experience, because, once again, confession time, dear viewer, I've never driven a non-turbo diesel car. So if anybody's got one that they'd like to lend to Automotive Tales for a road trip, please let us know, because I would love to go and do it. Now, as we do these road trips, it's really important to us that we bring you fresh content for every place we visit. Therefore, we make sure that every road we visit is brand new to this video. We join as we're about to head to the M1 motorway, and actually, realistically, probably the first opportunity for me to see how this car performs at motorway speeds. It must be said, as we just sort of bring ourselves towards the motorway junction, everything feels reasonably tight in this car. There are a couple of things that I would note after 514,000 miles, and I'm sure they've been noted by all of the people that have driven this car before me. The first one is, I'm actually surprised by how tight the gearbox feels. The clutch, I tend to drive automatic cars. I must admit the clutch took a little bit of getting used to. It is very short, so I would say that the clutch is not in its optimum condition. So, motorway cruising speed. I'm able to have a conversation with you, dear viewer. It is a 5-speed. So, you know, we're in 5th gear. Interestingly, I can't tell you what revs we're doing, but let's presume it's around maybe 2,500, 3,000. Because, and I've only realised this as we were driving around on the weekend, this car doesn't have a rev counter. How many cars in the mid-2000s came as standard without a rev counter? I'd love to know, because this isn't even the base model, but the only other ones I can work out so far are cheap super minis. So, you know, the Citroen C1, Peugeot 107s, Toyota Aygos, it was an optional extra, or, you know, depending on the spec, came on a little pod that came out the side of the Speedo. But I think by that point, and maybe some vans, everything had a rev counter. So, dear viewers, I realise I haven't really told you where I'm going today. Today I'm going from very close to Automotive Tales HQ in Leicestershire down to multiple addresses in Bedfordshire. So not the longest journey, however, earlier in the week I was in Hertfordshire and Basingstoke, and I didn't fancy doing an overnighter with it. So here we are with a much more sort of, I suppose, relevant journey to my normal day-to-day work. I've put the other camera on, but realising it's sort of like a mini Pompadour, because obviously on that camera you can see this camera that is filming me. So we've got like this effect going on. But I thought, why not? So a couple of observations from me with regards to last night when I was driving this car back from Automotive Tales HQ. It's not very well lit. There's a panel of controls, which obviously I'll take some better shots of shortly. The only thing that actually lights up at night is the CD player. There is no lighting behind the panel for the air conditioning and the heating controls, or the electric windows. And it just got me thinking that to me seems an oversight in what's supposed to be a practical car. However, I think perhaps that just harks back to the value proposition that this car was built to provide at the time. I can't get over how cheap these cars were. Not just brand new, but you could pick up a second-hand one, you know, for sort of £6,000-7,000 a year old. And I remember it very well. At the end of their run, I used to work for a car company called Motorpoint, and we used to sell a lot of these end-of-run 2010 models for peanuts, normally with that horrible 1.6 petrol engine in, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. But I think it does sort of signify the value proposition, and it got me thinking about the fact that, you know, that's sort of beyond one manufacturer. I think that might be gone, and even then they're sort of creeping up in price. My thinking in my head is that the modern day alternative to a Citroen Xsara Picasso is probably the Dacia Duster, or the Jogger, I suppose, if you really want something even more ugly. But I think the Duster actually is a fine little car. The Jogger just looks proportionately weird, and I'm not particularly enamoured. I don't know, John's going to shoot me because he is a Dacia fan and nearly bought one many times. So we're currently skirting our way around the city of Leicester. It picks up well in the traffic. I'm happy that, you know, I'm not a danger to anybody. It's a nice, easy drive. I have no complaints so far. overpass. Right, final stop completed for today. So we go back to past the Picasso. It seems everybody in this little village is getting their oil deliveries today because there's been so many oil lorries going in and out. But we are back at the car. Time to hit the road again. It is now a glorious late winter afternoon. The sun back in my eyes as I'm heading more north again now. And I've got probably another 70 miles, 80 miles to do today. Current mileage as we sit here, 514,762. So we have increased from when I last spoke to you. We've just been doing quite a few sort of windy roads in the Bedfordshire region. So I'm sort of in the MK postcodes actually at the moment, if I'm honest with you, heading back towards the M1 motorway. And I'm genuinely surprised by how well this car holds onto the road. I think it is genuinely quite astonishing that for a massive box, it doesn't wallow more than it does. I was sort of expecting it to be a bit of a handful and not that inspiring. But actually, you know what? You do sort of feel, don't get me wrong, there is still some movement and play, but you don't ever feel like you're out of control. Maybe part of that is to do with this 2-litre engine. I know I mentioned it earlier, but it's probably important to recognise that this is the 2-litre HDI engine. It does produce a mind-blowing 90 brake horsepower. Obviously, the 1.6 that replaced it, I think, was about 110. I spoke earlier about specs as well, and what I didn't really truly appreciate is that because this is a pre-facelift model, there were only 2 specs when this came out. There was the LX and the SX. We are currently in the SX, so beyond potentially some optional extras, which I know later down or after the 2004 facelift, you know, there were more trims, there was big glass sunroofs and things like that. I don't think those options were available when this car came out. It was kept to a really simplistic level for budgetary reasons, and I think, you know, that sort of shows in the ergonomic designs I showed earlier. But I would say overall this car has impressed me, but I can't get over this whole how accessible this car is compared to modern vehicles. And, you know, I think about the fact that you can take out all of the back seats and you've got a van that's probably got a bigger payload or bigger load space than a modern van. And I can now understand why there's perhaps not many left, because I think they probably all did end up being absolutely thrashed and abused as potentially even traders' vans. It just makes so much sense and was so much cheaper with a bulletproof diesel engine attached to it. Why would you not? I'd be interested to see the history of this car, because I've noticed in the corner of the windscreen there is a sticker for French toll booths, or at least I think it's French toll booths, with a private number plate on, and it begs that question of, you know, what did this car used to do? Where were they taking this car? Was it going down to France all the time, hence the 25,000 miles a year? It fascinates me that someone picked this car to do it, and then obviously just carried on. The other thing that surprised me really well, and having spoken to some of the previous people that've had the car, I know it's had odds and sods done to it through, you know, just people caring. What's really interesting actually is when you look at this, when you look at what people have done, it's been maintained impeccably.
Yeah, so this is actually quite high spec oil. This is Total Quartz Racing 1050, probably quite a few quid's worth, and you're going to look at me and go, you're mad, what the hell are you doing? It's good quality oil, it's slightly thicker than what it's supposed to have, which for an engine as leggy as this will help it, and yeah, basically it's free, so it's going in.
But cosmetically, people have left it to do its natural aging, and when you look at that inside, it's incredible how light the wear is on everything you can see. I think part of that is probably the moquette that's used. I think that's very intentional. If you put a pattern on, it hides things. But also you look at things like these armrests that albeit one of them's at an interesting angle these days, but can still support an arm. It's still got such little wear for 500,000 miles of arms on the rest. I think the most hard-wearing, or the most worn part of the whole design will be the steering wheel, and ultimately it's not a leather wheel. That was added on to later models, particularly the Desire spec, post-facelift. So I'm really impressed by it. Interestingly, one of the exterior-wise things that's perhaps wearing a little bit are the bumpers. And if you ever want to try and work out whether you're in a post or pre-facelift Picasso, they're the main point, really. They were all colour-coded post-facelift. So if you ever see one like this, it's a pre-facelift car. If it's got diesel written on the back, it also means it's that 2 litre, because they stopped doing the 2 litre at the facelift in 2004. It is incredible when you think about the fact that after that facelift, the car then carried on through till 2010 in Europe, and I believe 2012 in South America. That's a good old length of time. Don't get me wrong, we're not at sort of Ford KA territory there. It was definitely a very good innings. I think probably one of the reasons why it earned its right to be the king of the MPVs for a while. And of course, during those last sort of 4 or 5 years of production, it was also joined by the C4 Picasso and the C4 Grand Picasso. So you'd have thought this would be redundant, but yet it was still selling in very strong numbers, mainly because of its very competitive pricing. The Picasso thing always interested me. Does anyone else remember the advert? There was a really distinctive advert of the robots at the factory, essentially being artistic on the bodywork in a Picasso style on a silver one of these, I think it was, as it went along the production line. Have a look on YouTube.
Xsara Picasso. L'imaginaire d'abord. Vous n'imaginez pas tout ce que Citroën peut faire pour vous.
It was just such an iconic mid-2000s advert. It's definitely of the time when I believe car manufacturers probably sort of hit a little bit of a sort of renaissance after those famous adverts of the 70s and 80s, particularly involving Volkswagen Golfs, I believe. So that sort of sticks in my mind. But of course, I hadn't really appreciated, as I think perhaps a lot of people didn't, the fact that Pablo Picasso was only just really dead in a lot of people's minds. I always think of him as being quite an older artist than he was, but ultimately, he was famed for a painting with a Citroen DS in the 60s and was still with us in the 80s. So it's incredible to think it was that recent. But anyway, I sort of digress a little bit, I suppose. So yeah, I'm going to venture back up to the north. I don't know whether this has been interesting in any way, shape or form. It's probably just more my sort of motorway musings, to put it in a John Robbins context. But I hope you've enjoyed coming out to work with me for the day and hearing my ramblings. And let's do some kind of lovely montage to show you my journey home as we go and try and find the motorway. I will see you at another point in life, no doubt on a road trip. Thank you for watching. Ta-ra.
Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching.
Very much worried that I'm rambling a lot and John's got to listen to all of this. I suppose that's maybe funny for me. I don't know. I'll just be smug while he's sat there having to listen to my dulcet tones. Sucks to be him because he's got to listen to me this evening as well. We're doing a game show tonight. We should do a car game show. I wonder whether we get people down to that. Let us know in the comments. Bleep bloop us in the comments. I'd love to know if we did a car quiz or a car game show. Would people travel from far and wide, especially if it was for charity?